Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I am going to be giving you some adult science fiction and fantasy recommendations. So there are a couple of reasons why I wanted to bring you this recommendation video today. So I want to have maybe not a discussion, but a little bit of an explanation before I start with the recommendations. So the first one is something that has annoyed me, and it's something that frequently comes up in the videos that have drama in the title, or our responses to drama, or our discussion videos. And sadly, there is a certain subset of booktube that looks down upon the YA portion of booktube, and this elitism really rubs me the wrong way, because I personally, especially this year, this percentage has been growing over the last few years, but especially this year, I am reading pretty much 50-50 young adult and adult, and the adult is just slightly a little bit more than the young adult. So the reason this annoys me so much is because it perpetuates the idea that there has to be a divide. You have to be one of the YA booktubers or one of the very serious adult booktubers, and it just really annoys me because obviously I'm smack bang in the middle. I am neither, really, although I do get the feeling that if somebody would put me in a box, they would put me in the YA one. I have no evidence to substantiate that, but it's just the feeling that I get, and so it annoys me even more. Now, what I really find the problem with this attitude and this way of thinking is essentially, as I have mentioned, the elitist connotations. You are not better if you read adult literature. You are not better if you read young adult. These are just two types of literature. They are two types of demographic. Now, I don't think that it's better for me to read adult or it's better for me to read young adult. I enjoy both for some of the same reasons, for different reasons, and there doesn't need to be this divide. If you are one of the serious adult booktubers that I mentioned, you can still read YA if you want to. You can read it in minority, you can read 50-50, you can do what you want. It is about reading what you enjoy. I also feel like the YA booktubers are looked down upon because the publishing industry puts more money into the young adult booktube as opposed to the adult booktube. Young adult gets more arcs, more promotion and things like that, and essentially it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As long as young adult continues to be more popular, publishers will put more money into it, and as long as publishers put more money into it, there will be more booktubers promoting young adult. And I feel like a lot of it does come from the publishing industry, and that should not negatively impact booktubers. The second thing that gave me the idea for making this recommendations video is something that I believe Bloomsbury have very cleverly just done. We have just seen the release of Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, which I am currently reading, and it received a lot of hype and people are really excited about it. And while I am reading it, and while I was reading the synopsis, I did have the feeling that while the premise of this book does sound good and really interesting, it isn't wholly unique. There are a lot of things in the synopsis that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's just adult fantasy. But what Bloomsbury have done with this is they have promoted an adult fantasy book to the people who are in their 20s but still predominantly read young adult, and so it seems a lot newer and a lot fresher than it actually is. Now, the book is pretty good. I can't give you like a rating on it yet because I am currently reading it. Like, the ending could be terrible for all I know, so I don't want to say like it's amazing or it's terrible because I haven't made my mind up yet. But the book on its own right, so far from what I can tell, is not a bad book, but it has definitely had a lot of money thrown at it, and the demographic that it is being marketed towards I found was really interesting and a clever move on Bloomsbury's part. And I thought, you know what, while a lot of people are really into adult fantasy, people who have never really read adult fantasy before or thought that it was too dense for them or too difficult, maybe looking for some more adult recommendations, and I have some for you guys. I have adult science fiction and fantasy recommendations, and so I am here to share them. Now that that is out of the way and I finished rambling, today I have 5 adult science fiction or fantasy recommendations to share with you guys. These are all ones that I have enjoyed. I have some pretty well-known ones in here, but I have also left out some pretty well-known ones, and I will probably do a follow-up to this at some point as I read more. But starting off with the only one that I don't actually own, I have Stormdancer by J. Kristoff, and I am recommending this one because a lot of people read Nevernight by J. Kristoff and not a lot of people read Stormdancer. Now, I have had somebody tweet me this week and say that they have picked up Stormdancer on my recommendation, which just warms my heart because I really fucking love this series. And I also know another friend with a bookstagram who has just posted a picture of it today, so I'm glad that a lot more people are picking this series up because it is really, really good. So this is a Japanese inspired alternate history slash dystopian that really walks the line between dystopian and fantasy. So I tend to classify it as fantasy, but it has strong elements of both dystopian and fantasy stories. On the dystopian side, we are in this futuristic yet steampunk Japan that is on the verge of environmental collapse. They use the lotus flower to run absolutely everything. They turn it into fuel, they smoke it, they put it on their crop, and essentially the fumes that are a byproduct of the usage of this flower have entered into the atmosphere. People have to use masks to stop them from getting a disease that is very similar to lung cancer. A lot of animals have become extinct and the population is really suffering. However, on the fantasy side of things, we have a young girl called Yukiko who is the daughter of the master of the hunt for the shogun. Now they have been given this task to find a thunder tiger, which is a very large mythical beast that is half eagle, half tiger. They think that this is an absolutely ridiculous errand because even normal animals are extinct in this world. Like, dogs are very rare. There's some tigers that are really suffering in this environment. So they think that they have absolutely no chance to find this animal, but the shogun will kill them if they don't. And so they go on this impossible mission. Members of Yukiko's family also have this power which is called the kenning, which enables them to experience bonds between animals. So that is on the fantasy aspect. And I just really loved the atmosphere of this world. Aside from that, Yukiko is a badass, strong female main character, very reminiscent to Mia from Nevernight. So I think that if you like both East Asian inspired fantasy and Nevernight, you will really love this series. However, I have been told by reviewers who know a little bit more about Japanese culture than I do that the representation is not 100% and some of the honorifics and Japanese language is not used quite correctly in this series. So if you are sensitive to things like that, then please be cautious when you are reading it. Next up, we will go for the most hyped one on here, and that is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Now obviously this does not need me to recommend it. It is already a very, very popular series. However, I did want to share it with you. I'm not going to go through the plot of this because everybody is pretty familiar with it by now, but I will go into the explanation of why I wanted to share this book with you. I've heard that a lot of people are really intimidated by adult fantasy. They think that it's going to be really dense, there'll be tons of characters, tons of locations, it'll be dry and all sorts of things like this. And a lot of that can be true for adult fantasy, especially older ones or really, really big series with really, really chunky books. So I think personally that if you like Game of Thrones the TV show and you are very intimidated by adult fantasy but would like to find a way in, I would definitely recommend picking up Game of Thrones, because all of those things that I said can be true. It can be dry, it can be dense, it's a long series with really thick books, but it's really easy to understand if you have seen the show because you know who all the characters are. So they're not really going to get mixed up in your mind. You're going to know what the locations look like. You're not going to get to a chapter from Tyrion like near the end of the book when you haven't seen him for a while and forget who he is, because you have a visual reference in your mind. There are plenty of other popular authors that you could pick up if you are looking for an introduction to epic fantasy, like Brandon Sanderson, but if you really want a story that you're familiar with and want to get a feel for the style of adult fantasy, especially ones that are a little bit older, then I would probably recommend picking up Game of Thrones if you are a fan of the show. Another genre-bending fantasy is The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. Now this one can be quite polarizing, but I absolutely loved it. This follows a girl who is the queen of her country. However, after many assassination attempts on her mother did decide to send her away with foster parents to raise her outside of the capital so that she was at less risk of being murdered. Now she has come of age and her mother died a little while back, and she's heading back to the capital to reclaim her throne. However, when she gets there, she finds out that her uncle, who has been sitting as regent, has agreed to some pretty preposterous things, including a regular shipment of the country's population to a neighbouring country who will start a war upon them if they don't send these people as slaves. Kelsey naturally puts a stop to that as soon as she gets there, but now she has to figure out a way for her failing country to survive an attack that is going to be launched upon them by one of the strongest countries in this world. Now, a lot of people really don't like this because it is pretty slow, but one of the things that I absolutely love about this is how it bends genres. This reads like a really classical fantasy, but it also has a dystopian, utopian time travel twist that is really damn interesting, and I just found the reveals regarding that to be absolutely mind-blowing. Another thing about this series is that the ending of the last book is so damn bittersweet that it broke my heart, and I know a lot of people really don't like the ending of this series, but to me it was the only ending that was right, even though it was pretty damn shocking, and I really think that this series is worth a read. For the sci-fi, we have a pretty well-loved one, which is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and this is the first in a series of companion novels that follow different groups of people that are traveling through space. As of yet, I have only read the first one, but I did absolutely love it, and in this you follow a crew of different species of human and alien as they are traveling to complete the job of a lifetime. Now, the Wayfarer is a tunneling ship, and what their job is to punch tunnels through space to make it easier for other citizens of the galaxy to travel through space faster. Every single member of the Wayfarer's crew has their own identity, and while we don't have any racial diversity in here, there is definitely representation of racial diversity that is depicted in the different alien races that we encounter and how they are treated and regarded across the galaxy. There is also sexual diversity and gender diversity, and I just thought that the way that this book promotes inclusivity in a sci-fi novel was really masterful and powerful. If humans and aliens really did exist together in space, this is like a slice of life. It follows them on the long way to a small angry planet. This entire book takes place over the period of time it takes them to get from the starting point to the place where they are going to start this really important and high-paying job. And along the way, they stop at ports, they meet new people, you see the relationships within the people on the ship grow. You also get to know them as individuals, and I just really thought it was beautiful and moving. And this may not be one for plot-driven readers, but if you really like to connect with the characters you are reading about, then I think you will really love this one. And lastly, a series by the woman who inspired this video, we have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. Now, The Bone Season to me is very reminiscent of George Orwell's 1984, and in this we follow a crime gang of psychics in dystopian London. Our main character, Paige Mahoney, is a really powerful psychic in this world. The only problem is that it is illegal to be a psychic. The government does not like it, and one day she is eventually captured when she reveals her powers in public. From there, and she goes to this very mysterious place, she meets some very mysterious creatures, and I just love the complexity and the political intrigue that is included in this series. The Bone Season is very complex, and I made the mistake the first time that I read this book of reading the entire first book without knowing there was a glossary at the back. So if you do go into this, please remember that there is a glossary. So when you're reading all these words that literally do not make any sense, you can go to the glossary and have a look. You don't have to struggle through it like I did. As soon as you open this book, you are kind of thrown into the world, and there is no pages and pages and pages of world building as there is in Priory of the Orange Tree. You kind of have to get to grips with the world and how it works as the plot is moving. But once I got past that hurdle, I found this to be really immersive, and I fell in love with a lot of the characters. Like with Priory of the Orange Tree, there is some diversity in here. There is a trans woman. There is also characters of different sexual orientation, and I think now would be a really great time to pick this up if you haven't already and really loved the Priory of the Orange Tree. So that is it for my adult science fiction and fantasy recommendations. Please let me know if you have read any of these and what you thought. I am continuously reading more and more adult fantasy, so I promise there will be a part 2 of this video at some point in the future. But that is everything from me today. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're a go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.